choosing to spend. Thank you everyone for choosing to spend your evening with us. We really appreciate it. I know that there are other places you could be, and I genuinely appreciate your input. Jeannie and Bob, you are our main audience here, and we just cannot express enough how much we appreciate you being here. And I hope that you can tell how sincere I am, and that the community input that we get for these parks really informs the decisions that we make, and it's vital to the success of our projects. So we really appreciate you being here. And we are excited to get started and show you what we have to talk about. So I am going to quickly turn it over to Councilman Flynn, who is gracious enough to be here with us today. So Councilman Flynn, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeannie and Bob, for being here also. I also live in Glenbrook, as you do, and I'm looking out on one of these parks from my sliding glass doors on Garland Saratoga Park. And I'm just looking forward to what improvements we can manage with the budget we have. And I have a few things I would like to see here, but I want to hear from the folks in the neighborhood. So thank you. Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Councilman. And so now we're going to turn it over to our consultants, Logan Simpson, to walk us through. We're going to start with Stanford and Balsam Park first, and then we'll move over to Garland and Saratoga.
Okay, I think that puts it into my hands. My name's Dan Arsenal. I'm with Logan Simpson, the landscape architecture consulting firm. It's doing the plans for these two parks. For the first section of time here, we're going to talk about Stanford and Balsam. And we are going to just dive into it. Just to run you through real quick what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to introduce ourselves a little bit, talk about what we're trying to achieve with this meeting. Take a look at where the park is, because we have the two. We want to make sure we're talking about the right one. Go through project timeline, what's out there right now, the money we have to spend, and what we will need to spend it on, and then would like to spend it on after the needs are met. We're going to talk a little bit specifically about playgrounds at this park, and then we'll have some just open question time at the end and talk about what's next. This is just a little information, more information on the meeting. If you do have questions that come up during the time before we get into the questions at the end, you can type them in the chat function. I'm not sure if mine will pop up in the screen share. But if it does, that's what it looks like. If not, then I'm just showing you nothing. But it looks like the little chat window there. And Steve, who is also with Logan Simpson, and Brittany, who was talking earlier, can answer your questions as they come up in there. If you haven't taken the survey yet, we would encourage you to do so. It's similar content to this, although maybe just a little bit more in depth. And you can use that link or the QR code, which we'll show again at the end. And I think that little chat window that just popped up is hopefully one of you dropping the chat link into, or the survey link into the chat. All right, by way of introduction, that's me smiling down at the bottom left there, Dan. I'm doing the majority of the, I guess, project management for this, for these two parks. Steve's kind of overseeing, and then Daniel Morgan is another landscape architect with us, Logan Simpson, who's doing a lot of the production work. And then Brittany, who you met earlier, is our project manager on the Denver Park side. All right, so what we want to do in this meeting is share what the project scope has been identified as. So what we want to achieve out of the project, and then the money we have to do that, and how it might break down, and what will be left over after what needs to be addressed has been addressed. And then we want to get some feedback from you, the community, and park users, to get an idea of how the park is used and what improvements we could make that would benefit you the most. So Stanford and Balsam Park is located at the east end of West Stanford Avenue. It's cul-de-sac, and then the nearest intersection is with South Balsam Way. There it is, highlighted on the map. So where we are now in the project at public meeting number 1 is trying to identify design elements and stuff that we would like to see in the parks moving forward. Going from here, we're going to take feedback that we get from the public meeting tonight and the survey that's live now, incorporate that information into 2 to 3 concept plans. This is all part of design development. And then we'll be progressing through construction drawings where we'll be taking feedback, incorporating it into designs. There'll be one more phase of public involvement where a preferred concept is shown occurring sometime midsummer. And then that feedback will be incorporated to produce the final construction drawings, with construction occurring over the course of next year, 2023. So at Stanford and Balsam, question? No, okay. At Stanford and Balsam currently, there's 2 sort of major focuses to this project. One being improvements to the playground area, and the other being improvements to the walks and trails. So the playground area currently is kind of outdated, has opportunities to be expanded, lacks accessible connections, and we'll touch on these in a little more detail in just a second. And then the walks and trails are deteriorating in a lot of spots. Social trails are appearing in spots where we don't necessarily want to see them. And improvements to the trail surface and alignment can increase connections through the neighborhood and into the greater Denver trail system. So here's a little more information on the playground. It does not currently have an accessible route to connect it from the street. Play structures are outdated. You can see they're kind of fading in the sun, deteriorating a little bit. Seating options for parents and guardians are limited, and there is an opportunity to expand the size of the play pit and include more bigger, better playground that would serve the neighborhood a little bit better. Moving into some of the issues with the trails, there are a couple places where there are either no connections. That's the top right image, or places where there are existing connections that are steep slopes or rough surfaces. And then there's also a couple places where social trails have appeared that are just dirt walks where maybe a paved walk would serve users a little bit better. So the project budget for this is $1.555 million. That money will be spent on trail improvements, playground improvements, and increasing accessibility for trail and playground, as well as a new irrigation system and some associated plantings, trees, potentially a bluegrass lawn. If there's other things you'd like to see, you can go ahead and type them into the chat. We're always looking for input on how the money should be spent. These questions are also all part of the survey online. So if you think of something later or just don't want to type it in the chat right now, we will see it if you put it in there as well. All right, so we're going to do a little bit more information on the playground. This structure is slated for total replacement, which is a good opportunity to pick something with some character, or that stands out, identifies the park, just looks a little better in place. So we're going to run through a couple different types of playground styles, and at the end we'll stop and discuss maybe what you would or would not like to see. So our first potential option is a more modern playground. You see lots of bright colors, strong geometry. They tend to be fairly tall. Just some representative images here. Next potential option is a nature-inspired playground. This is going to use lots of natural materials or natural look materials that are a little more durable and safe. The third is a traditional playground. You know, just what you picture when you think playground. Lots of posts and platforms, slides, tend to be bright primary colors. And then the last option that we've listed, of course, there's probably tons of others, is a theme playground. So sky's the limit. If there's something that you think might represent the neighborhood, as far as the theme goes, then we would love to hear about that as well. All right, so we're gonna pause here for a moment and give you just a second to type in the chat, or if you'd like to just say it out loud, you can raise your hand to be unmuted and our moderator can handle that. If there are no questions, we can just roll into the next thing.
And Dan, I also want to let the people here in the meeting know, because of the size of the meeting, you all should be able to unmute yourself. If you have video capability and are comfortable, feel free to do that. But definitely any questions or things you like about the playground, we definitely want to hear either through the chat or again, you should feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable to do so.
Also, maybe worth saying, if the playground's not your focus, let us know that too.
And for those that have joined us right now, the main park that we're looking at is Stanford and Balsam. We'll get to the second park once we go through the details, just in case you're coming in and wanting to speak to the other park.
Could I ask a question, Jesus?
Of course, Councilman.
At Stanford and Balsam, my kids played on that playground a couple of decades ago, and it looks to me like it hasn't been updated. How old is, we mentioned that the play equipment is dated. Do we know how old that equipment is? How long it's been since it's been replaced? And if we don't
find that out for you, I can try to do that during the meeting, but if not, I'll certainly follow up with you afterwards.
Certainly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds like probably don't have any specific questions on that, unless there's something coming up in the chat, because I cannot see that. In which case, I'm relying on my backup to answer it.
We do have one comment in the chat from Lo Osen. It says, I love these ideas, and I think it would be great to provide an opportunity for kids to climb and get exercise while having fun. That is our goal. Absolutely.
I think we can do that. All right, I'm gonna move on then, if that's no objections. All right, and now just general questions, comments, any other input. We'd be happy to hear it. If you have questions that you think of after this, you can send them to Brittany. Email's on the screen.
So it looks like we have another a follow-up with Lo that for adult option, that exercise equipment is another option for the park area for adults.
I'm curious how the themed playgrounds work. are those like custom made, or is there like a catalog that you choose from? Because like I loved the bird, but not so much the spaceship, you know? The bird was cool.
So yeah, a lot of them, there are, it depends on which representative or which manufacturer, but there are some that are a standardized, customized one, and some where they will work with you for, you know, it's a bit of an upcharge, but they will work with you on whatever theming you can come up with. And lead time is the question on it, but yep, these have all been, the ones you're seeing there have all been designed and installed. So.
And they can be all sort of similar skeletons is maybe the right word, underneath. And then it's the theme comes from your decorative pieces, excuse me, decorative pieces that they put on after, on top of.
Stacy, well, can we ask a question of the community? And I know that the councilman as a historian, are there themes within this neighborhood or this park that we should explore if that is one of the options that that we look towards is more of a theme playground than some of the other ones that we showed? And definitely anyone in the community, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know if historically, culturally, there are things that we should take into consideration for a theme of a playground.
Jesus, just to kick it off, back before this was annexed in the late 70s, this was part of the Cook Ranch. So this was very much ranching territory. There were a lot of irrigation ditches that ran through here. My kids and I, we used to ride our bikes over some of the dirt hills that were left behind when the ditches were abandoned up here where the drainage basin was constructed. And so we do have that sort of background. That's about ranch land mostly. Governor Grant used to own the ranch south of here back in the 1800s. That gave way to Grant Ranch and Governor's Ranch. So mostly it was ranching territory.
Great. Lo, thank you very much. That was going to be my question to community members. Is that something we should explore a little further? And even if we were not able to do a full theme playground, put nods to that history in the playground.
Certainly, I would defer to the folks who, the other folks who live here, what their preference is. But I've been down in this area for 40 years and watched it grow up from a lot of vacant ground into what we see here today.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear what others have to say.
And again, we have a comment in the chat saying that they do like that. Anyone else, feel free to unmute yourself, put in the chat. If there's other ideas that we should take into consideration, and again, not to say that the theme is what the playground will be, just want to clarify that. But as we build out the idea for the playground, we want to make sure that we take into consideration what is representative in this community.
Thank you, Jesus. Lo Olson also commented, I see here, adult exercise equipment might be an idea to consider. As you know, Jesus, a couple of years ago, my office donated a budget to upgrade the adult exercise equipment in Bear Valley Park, and it was very well received. If we're going to do the trail here and then up through to Lake of Lakes, having some adult exercise equipment stationed along the way might be very beneficial to the community.
I'll allow the project manager or the consultants to be able to respond on the possibility of adding those stations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You know the ones I'm talking about along the trail in Bear Valley Park. I
Very
have a feeling though
familiar.
we'll run out of budget before we run out of ideas. Okay, so I'm very aware of that.
That's unfortunately always the case, Councilman. But I think it's a great idea, and we could definitely plan for that in the future if it can't be incorporated in this project here. One interesting, I guess, detail I would want to kind of parse out is if there were exercise stations, would you prefer having them around the playground stationary so that you're there watching children at the playground? Or is it more of an experience that you, as you walk through the trail, like you were kind of alluding to on your way to or from Lake of Lakes or the other connections that we're making here? So if anybody has any thoughts on that, I'd like to hear more. I've seen it both ways. I think they're both successful. It really depends on if you're have a destination or if you're passing through.
And again, I would defer to the folks here to chime in. I'm uncharacteristically quiet right now.
Yes, I would say there are advantages to both. The North Trail connection gets a little narrow and constrained between the adjacent properties, and there's a lot of tree overhead canopy, and so the initial thoughts are we treat that as we treat the rest of Denver Parks properties, where we're very sensitive to constructing items within the tree drip zones, and so that's one consideration into anything with structures and footings. The other is exercising louder kind of equipment next to residences. So, there are kind of benefits to both as to where you're doing the trail addition, and there are challenges to both. So a benefit to any of the equipment around the play area is that's where most of the eyes are going to be on it. And so observation and stuff tends to keep things more safer and less vandalism and that kind of stuff. So considerations we'll take into options for both if that should come up, more public input.
I have another question related to the extension of the trail. Excuse me. It goes out to Balsam, but it's also proposed to extend up to Lake of Lakes Park. We don't own, the city does not own the property where that trail now goes. Do we have an easement with the townhome community that is on the south side of the lake to use that? And we do, okay. And the reason I ask is that when we have plowed and cleared snow from that trail in the past, we have damaged that community's irrigation equipment, and we've had to go in and repair it. So if there's any way when we improve the trail there, assuming we do, can we locate it or build it in such a way that a small plow going through there does not do further damage to the community's property?
That is a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Councilman. We do have a 20-foot easement that runs through that area. So we can construct the trail there and make it a lot wider to accommodate plow vehicles and trash pickup and all that.
Good.
One thing I noticed with walking that is they actually have irrigation on either side of the trail. And I think that adds a little bit to that issue. And so I think what we do in the redesign of the area is actually have the irrigation only on the east side where their landscaping is, and because there's really no reason for it to be on the west side of the trail anyway. But yeah, we would work out all those details to make sure that that functions very well.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is, have we assessed the status of the prairie dog colony that was in the ravine where the North Marston drainage goes through on toward Balsam? About 2 years ago, I took a tour of the neighborhood through there. They were very concerned about the prairie dogs, both positively and negatively. And in fact, I would urge that we do not disturb or damage the prairie dogs there. They are a keystone species, and they are essential to the circle of life, mostly with hawks and burrowing owls and other species that feed on them. So can we take care when we go through there not to, I hate to say eliminate, I guess would be the best word, take care not to eliminate the prairie dog colony that is there.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So we are very aware of the prairie dogs. They're very hard to miss when you're out there. You can just hear them little yipping away, which is kind of adorable. And so what we've noticed over the last few years is that prairie dog colony has really shifted up onto the kind of level area and beyond the trail. And I know that causes some concerns for the homeowners that back right up to Stanford and Balsam. And so what we try to do with this project is just not relocate the colony or anything like that, but keep them in the ravine itself. Yes. and out of the trail. So we're working with we have a wildlife ecologist with DPR, and we've met with her. I walked the site with her multiple times, and we're talking about the potential of a prairie dog fence being installed there. Now, these are expensive. They don't necessarily look great, but we've had a lot of luck with them up in the Central Park area, where we have a park actually where it's Central Park, formerly Stapleton, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. And that actually connects to the wildlife arsenal and Commerce City. And so you have all of these things coming into place. And around the DPR park, we have a prairie dog fence, which is very successful in keeping the dogs where they need to be and not into the residential areas. So we're very aware of it. We want to protect them and keep them where they are. We're not sure exactly what that looks like right now, but it's definitely a consideration. And we want to also make sure that the playground and the amenities that we're improving can be enjoyed by everybody all the time. And so that's part of that consideration too.
Thank you. And I believe you just accurately portrayed the agreement that we made with the neighbors, that we keep the prairie dog colony confined to the ravine as best we could.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we're scheduled to not move on to our next park until 6:15, but I think if that kind of wraps up the discussion at Stanford and Balsam, we can move on. Everybody's okay with that. Okay, hearing no objections. We can always come back to Stanford and Balsam. We'll do a Q&A at the end. So if you do think of anything, you can always pop it in the chat or raise your hand at the end and we can come back. So. But with that, we'll move on to Garland and Saratoga. Oh, actually, we've had a few people join since we started and introduced and all of that. So let me just take a second, introduce myself again. My name is Brittany White. I am the project manager with Denver Parks and Rec. We have our design consultants, Logan Simpson, with us, and also Councilman Flynn in his office. So I just want to introduce you, Councilman, and so you can take a minute here and talk about your neighborhood.
Oh, thank you. And again, welcome. And Stacy Simonet, one of my aides in the office, is also here. I watched them build this park when I first moved to Colorado about 41 years ago. And used to take the kids over to the King Supers where they had a Baskin Robbins, and I live on the park. My backyard fence gives out onto the park. It's just a great amenity, but it needs a lot of TLC. It needs it needs its walks. If I had one outcome I'd really like to see for both of these parks, it's that the asphalt be replaced with concrete. The asphalt is very difficult to walk on. If you were pushing a stroller, if you were in a wheelchair, they're very difficult to navigate. The entrance from Hoyt Street on this at this park is very steep and difficult to navigate. I doubt that it meets ADA grades. And so I would ask that we take a look at that. I know a couple of months ago, there was a surveyor out here taking measurements. So I know that you're very aware of the grades and the elevations. If both of these parks could have their walks done in concrete, it would reduce maintenance and it would be a much better amenity. I only wish that the rest of the wagon trail along the Bowles lateral behind the rec center on out to Bellevue could be paved in concrete. I understand that's going to be repaved in asphalt, hopefully this year. But every other park in the city, especially on the east side, I see they're getting concrete walks. And we should get them too, down here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. That is our top goal too, but we'll get to that. I don't want to, give away the ending here, but with that, I'll turn it over to Dan with Logan Simpson. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Arsenault. I'm a landscape designer with Logan Simpson, the landscape architecture consultant for this project. And fortunately, walks are at the top of the priority list for this park here. So hopefully we can make some people happy with that. So rolling into it, outline a little bit of what we're gonna, covering stuff up on myself here, of what we're gonna be talking about in regards to Garland and Saratoga. Go through, introduce ourselves a little bit, talk about what we're gonna be trying to achieve with this meeting tonight. Make sure we know what we're talking about since we have the two parks in the neighborhood. Talk a little bit about where we are in the project process and where we're going to go, into existing conditions, what's out there, issues that need to be addressed, potential opportunities to improve the park in other ways. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the money that we have to spend on improvements and what it needs to be spent on. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions and then talk about where we go from here. Just a little bit of information on the public meeting. Sorry if this is repetitive to anybody that joined early enough to catch it in the last segment, but we'll go through it again for anyone that came in a little bit later. If you have questions or comments during the meeting, if you can type them in the chat. We have Brittany and Steve, also with Logan Simpson, will be answering questions as they come up. And then if you want to ask your question out loud, there'll be one or two spots where we'll stop and we can unmute and give you the floor. We would also ask that if you have time and can take our survey, we're collecting public feedback via that method as well. You can use that QR code or the survey link there, and Brittany or Steve will put it in the chat again so that it's right at the top. And then we'll leave this on the screen at the end so you can see it again if you need it. All right, this is us. There's myself, Dan Arsenault. We'll be sort of in charge of managing projects. Steve is going to be providing oversight and keep me on a tight leash. Kevin is one of our designers and he'll be doing a lot of the legwork. And then Brittany is managing the project from the Denver Park side. So what we're trying to achieve here tonight is to introduce what the project scope is, what needs to be addressed as part of the project, what we really hope we can address is maybe a better way of putting that as part of the project, and the money we have to do that. And then to sort of go the next step from there, understanding what you, the community, want and need out of the park, so that we can properly allocate where we're spending our time and money. So just to make sure we're clear and all talking about the same place, this section we're focusing on Garland and Saratoga Park, at the intersection of Garland and Saratoga. Both these parks still officially unnamed, so we refer to them by their intersections. where we are here, public meeting number 1. This is after the information gathering phase that we've done. Surveys have been completed, initial ideation of what could go into the parks, and then identifying issues that need to be addressed. So we collected all this information. Now we're bringing it forward to get public input on that we'll use to develop some initial concepts that then go back to the public, collect more feedback. That becomes a preferred plan, and then construction drawings are produced off of the preferred plan. So that's all stuff that occurs over the course of this summer. We have construction on the park occurring over the course of the next year. All right, so our two big things to be addressed at Garland and Saratoga are, as excuse me, Councilman Flynn mentioned, the walks and trails. We did notice a number of unaccessible trail connections, spots where the pavement was deteriorating, especially the one from Hoy Street. And then also the irrigation system is not at its prime anymore. Lots of failures, and it appears to be possibly leaking in a couple places. So that's a big ticket item that will need a complete replacement or near complete replacement. And then there's also this drainage issue that we're hoping to address. There's our walks and trails, some of them settling unevenly too. The deteriorating asphalt, as we mentioned, rough slopes, as we mentioned, and then also no accessible seating at the playground. And there could be an opportunity to add some. So for this project, the total budget is just over $1 million. In our initial costing, it looks like most of that money will end up earmarked for replacing the irrigation system and improving accessibility and replacing deteriorated trails. However, we do still want to ask, as part of future planning, or if we end up under budget on other things, what would be a good way to allocate any additional funds that were or did become available. So we're gonna pause here for a minute. And if anybody has any thoughts on that, you can go ahead and you can, or I think we're back to raise your hand to be unmuted, or type it in the chat and we can discuss.
Yes. Dan, again, for those that joined us right as we were taking some information on the other park in Marston, feel free to unmute yourself if there are budget priorities. There are questions on this on the survey that we hope you'll take and share with your neighbors. But if there's specific questions or a specific budget that you would like Denver Parks and Recreation to consider, please, this is your time. Put it in the chat, unmute yourself, and let us know. We do have our West Area Planner, Ana Claudia, on this call. And so she's also someone, along with the council office, that will advocate for things that are still missing in the park. So we definitely heard trails and similar trailing system that other parks are being upgraded to.
We also have the comment from Lowe that accessible seating is high on his priority list as well. And so you have to, currently the benches themselves are on concrete slabs that are separated from the walks, and some of the walks in that adjacent to the playgrounds area are not accessible themselves. So thanks, Lowe. That's great comment.
And Brittany or Ana Claudia, I apologize, I didn't see your name on the list. Hi, do we have the age of this playground. I think it's been replaced once since I've been here. And I recall when the circular slide was damaged and torn off a couple of years ago, I worked with Scott Gilmore to get that replaced. I thought he told me at the time that he was hesitant to replace that slide piece because they were looking at replacing the playground. Now it appears that we are not replacing the playground, so thank you for getting the slide repaired. But where does this playground stand on the list of the age list? And when would it ordinarily come up for a redo?
So
Hi, Councilman. Brittany, you want to answer that?
sorry, yeah, I just looked it up. This one was redone in 2002, so it's 20 years old.
Okay,
The Stanford and Balsam, just to answer your question there, in our system, it is unknown, which means super old.
my
I
son,
yeah.
my son is 45 and he played on that. So,
Yeah.
oh my God, thank you.
So, but yeah, Anna Claudia, I think you're a little bit better equipped to answer the long-term questions.
Yeah, so we do have the other playground in our radar for replacement. Right now, it's not combined with this project. It's gonna be a later project, a later improvement for this park. It is on our CIP planning list. It is on our radar. When we looked into the feedback that we received from our maintenance and and the community, I think our maintenance crew, kudos for them. They actually do take care of this playground really well, even though it's old, has hold up really well over time. And you know, the replacement is coming, but it's not gonna be looked in within this project. But you know, the good news is there is a round two of phase improvements for this project, for this park.
Thank you, Anna Claudia. I
Welcome.
would definitely say Stanford Balsam being an unknown age, definitely it should be higher on the list than this park right out here at Garland. But I'd hate to lose sight of it. So I look forward to this.
No, it is on our CIP list.
Great. Thank you.
I would just like to follow up with, unfortunately, the age of the irrigation system is even older than the playground equipment. So yes, it is definitely in need of replacement.
Yeah, and just to adding on to that too, we work really closely with our operations team that does the maintenance on the irrigation systems and the playgrounds, and they're the ones that inspect our playgrounds as well. And so a lot of what we're saying now is informed by the amount of maintenance at both playgrounds and on the irrigation system at Garland and Saratoga. There is not one at Stanford and Balsam, but that's also what's informing that decision too.
And sorry to jump in here really quick. We've had some people join us. And for those that were joining us specifically for the 6:15 session of Garland and Saratoga, we started a little early just because Balsam was a little quicker. So we're taking suggestions for other improvements that should be considered at Garland and Saratoga. And so if you join in the middle of the conversation, expecting to get some information on Garland and Saratoga, we're kind of in the feedback. So you should feel free to put information in the chat, unmute yourself, and for any recommendations on Garland and Saratoga. We will go back to have more of an open discussion on both parks here in a bit. Okay, just wanted to make sure that way people didn't feel lost in the middle of the meeting. I think we've gotten some additional chats, Brittany and Steve. I'm not sure if you want to respond to any of the suggestions that are coming in.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd love
spec-
to. We had a comment from Jeannie and Bob. It'd be nice to have additional seating beside the playground area for people who have difficulty walking long distances, who would like a places to stop and rest. Low agrees. The playground is important and definitely needs better seating options. And Kevin also said excellent suggestion. So we aren't going to tackle any of the other seating, but we're going to try to stretch our budget to make sure that we can have at least some accessible seating at the playground. Yeah, we understand too from our ops team who are there all the time. They know where people park. They're parking by that playground entrance, accessing it. So we know that that's an important connection. And if, you know, unfortunately, we do have to prioritize some of the trails, we know that that would be the top priority. But if that's not correct, please let me know. We think that's the top priority based off of where we see people parking, but please let me know. I know the Hoyt Street connection is also very important.
And just to kind of talk about, let me finish real quick here, just to a little bit of what we are coming across as we're very early on looking at costing for the amenities. That number one, the irrigation system itself, it takes up a good chunk of the $1 million budget at this point in time. So it's infrastructure is tough to, you don't really see, you know, the benefits or the amenities of it, but it's it defers the cost of maintenance and a lot of what the staff is seeing as far as upkeep and it's only getting worse. So
Thank you. Jesus, I'd like to take a moment just to thank the Southwest maintenance crews that take care of this park in particular, and how quickly they have in the past replaced some of the trees that have died. I do want to bring to your attention that there's I think it's a silver maple at the highest point in the park here at the south end that seems to be under a lot of distress. I know that the crew came in about a year and a half ago and did some pruning on it. It would be a shame to lose that tree. I think Ginny and her crew will know which one I'm talking about. That tree was planted by the Melody Homes folks when they finished off the subdivision here between Melody and Crane, and it was supposed to represent the highest point in the subdivision, and it's under quite a bit of distress. So thank you for your efforts so far in maintaining the trees in the park, and keep an eye on this one in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, for the kind words. We, Jeannie and her crew definitely do a great job in Southwest Denver maintaining parks down there. We will definitely send the information to both her and our forestry team to see what could be done on this particular tree.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know that. I actually was not aware of that maple and its history, so thank you. So what else besides additional accessible seating around the playground?
Again, this is a great time to give what you would like to see at this park to this team. Even if we can incorporate it in this phase, we could go into future planning on it. So, if this is the park you primarily use near your home, definitely understanding what you all would like to see at the park.
So we do have a question in the chat. Does the topography at the Hoyt Street entrance lend itself to making that ADA accessible? There is quite a steep berm there. So the short answer is no. So one of the reasons why we want to tackle the walks and the irrigation system at the same time is because that gives us the unique opportunity to actually shift locations slightly. The Hoyt Street entrance is where it is, but I'm thinking of the corner of Garland and Saratoga, for example. We kind of have the same condition there where the asphalt walk just kind of shoots right up. With the existing trees there, we don't have the ability to change that grade and bring it down and make it accessible. So what we'd actually most likely be looking at is relocating that entrance so that it can be accessible. We have another question in the chat from Aaron. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. What were the recommended playground updates? Joined late, thanks. So unfortunately at Garland and Saratoga, we do not have any playground updates planned for this project. However, the playground itself we know is 20 years old. Despite its age, it's in really good condition. It's very well loved and very well maintained. And we have it on our long range planning. We don't have a year yet for that, but it's on our long range plan. It's on the CIP plan. So we will get to it. It's on our radar, but it's not going to be part of this project. We are going to replace the entire playground at Stanford and Balsam, which we're really excited to do that. I think it's about a mile away. So it's a little far, but that's where we're going to focus our playground improvements right now. So thanks, Aaron, for that.
And then Brittany, again, I want to give people time to definitely give any suggestions, but I do want to bring up one small thing that you all have heard us. We keep calling the parks by their intersection. As was briefly mentioned, both these parks do not have an official name within Parks and Recreation. We do know that this particular park is known locally as Wagon Trail Park, and so some people may call it that and may know it as that park. It's never officially gone through the naming process with Denver Parks and Recreation, so we still have it as a named park at Garland and Saratoga. One thing that DPR is doing is during engagement efforts, we are letting community members know that when a park is unnamed officially, just in case there is anyone interested in taking up the effort, community members are able to take up efforts. The council office does have to eventually vote on it, so it's best to work with them and make sure that it's a name that's appropriate, that meets the criteria for naming, and be able to move that process. If anyone is interested in looking at either of these two parks, we could definitely work with you during this process, because we're engaging you right now. It doesn't mean that later on it can't be taken on, but we just wanted to let you know, because we do know there are local names that are used and people say it. I don't know if either of these two parks have a park name on there. So, you know, in other parks, it's very clearly labeled what park you're in. I don't know if these two particular ones have that, but that's the reason we don't have official names for these parks. And so just wanted to take a little time before we have kind of go back to the conversation on the amenities.
Thank you, Jesus. You know, Google and some of the other mapping services call it Wagon Trail Park, and that always, I always found that to be incorrect. I always considered the trail that now daylights out to Kipling, but the paved trail in concrete that goes through the Glenbrook drainage basin area and then around the Southwest Rec Center and comes around the DPS property out to Field Street. I always considered that to be Wagon Trail Park. Then we have Garrison Union Park adjacent to that. And so I don't know why this would be called Wagon Trail at all. It's not on Wagon Trail Drive. Lo Osen noted in the chat that everybody around here calls it the Purple Park because of the coloring of the playground.
Sounds like
It's not the neighbor's.
appropriate name.
It's not the neighbor's house that used to be. They used to be colored purple. That backed up to the park.
Great, that's good to know, because we, as you saw in the presentation, we did put Wagon Trail just because in Google Maps and some of the other mapping features that's what they have it labeled on. Of course, people could just simply contact and make that suggestion, which is very common for unnamed parks, for people to
Now,
do that.
the trail that goes along the Bowles Lateral would be natural to call that Wagon Trail Park, and I always thought that that's what it was, and that somehow the name just got mixed up and incorrectly associated with this park right here. So thank you for that background.
But just wanted to take that time, Brittany, if you want to get us back onto the matter in hand of the improvements at both these parks.
Yeah, I like Purple Park and I would vote on that. So not that I have voting rights, but I love it. And yeah, I think there are not any, there's not any signage, I don't believe, that indicates any different naming. I think it just says the intersections. But yeah, so thanks everybody again. And I think we just want to open it up to any questions or comments. If there's any information that you think we might have missed or things that we should go over again too, we're happy to do that. So if you want to, please feel free to unmute, raise your hand, put it in the chat. We just love to hear from you. Which park do you use more often? You know, what do you think about the playgrounds and the trails at each? And what can we do to make them better? So we do have a comment from Jeannie and Bob Short. It says, I walk my dog at the park every day and would love to thank the maintenance crew for taking good care of it. I think they do a good job. It's always clean and well cared for. The people in our neighborhood really appreciate their work. Thank you so much. That means a lot. I wish that Ginny, our op soup, was on the call. She does attend these meetings in her district because she really cares about these parks, and she is just an incredible asset in our team. I will pass that on to Ginny, but thank you so much. That's very kind. So does anyone want to review Stanford and Balsam? I know that I think we only had one or two folks on when we were going through that project. But we can go back to it if anybody has any questions or wants to hear what we're up to over there.
And Brittany, my suggestion would be simply, I hope Aaron is still on, but if we want to show those playground examples, again, just so people can see. Again, we're not doing it at Garland and Saratoga, to be clear, but just in case there's any additional comments or anything that people are thinking.
I think we did lose Aaron, but yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Dan, going back to those playground options, that would be great. Thanks.
And it's another opportunity just to say with the survey, it will take you to the information where you can input on both parks.
And we have another comment in the chat I'd like to read from Lo. We use all three parks. I'm assuming you're including Garrison and Union in that third one. I agree they are all kept clean and well kept. I know my kids would love to have the dirt hills back. I like the climbers and themed ones. Okay, yes, correct. Garrison and Union. The dirt hills. Okay, someone's got to fill me in.
Brittany, when before everything was built up around here, and I first moved out here 40 some years ago, where the Walmart is now at Wadsworth and Quincy, there was a broken down little horse barn, and where the Glenbrook drainage basin is, there were several branches of the Bowles lateral irrigation ditch that branched off and went in all different directions. You can still see some of the head gates there, and it was just great when they stopped running water through them for the kids to ride along the edge of the berm along the ditch, dip down and ride up and do pop wheelies and catch some air. And dare I say that I did that myself, but I would not try that now. But it was just a lot of fun. I don't know if that means that people here would like to see a cycle track like at Ruby Hill. I know that we don't have the budget for that. But that was a great time for the kids to be playing down here. It's all built up now, of course, and those dirt hills are gone. The Walmart went in, I think, in '83 and took care of all that.
Oh, thank you so much for that history. That sounds like fun. The kind of natural pump track.
Yes.
Yeah, we are building a few pump tracks all over the city. We have a new outdoor I might mess up this title. It's an action adventure plan, outdoor adventure plan. So it's like looking at alternative sports and where we can locate those kind of amenities. So cycling in a pump track would be one of those considered alternative sports. So yeah, we're looking at that. We have a master plan for that. And if this area needs to be on that list, let us know. But they're really fun. We've actually also done a lot of these smaller, like kid pump tracks, or sometimes we call them a bike scoot. And basically what that is we have one at Wash Park, City Park, Bible Park, and it's like a circular track that just undulates so the kids can kind of ride along it, but it's much smaller, so meant for those starting out on their bikes and scooters. But yeah, we've seen a lot of people really love those. We have a couple more comments. One from Liz. My kids grew up during the dirt hill days. And from Lo, there's still some dirt hills. Just a couple of years ago, my teens used to ride them, Dudley and Stetson. So that's awesome.
Well, and again, sorry for jumping around. But is that the type of amenity we should be considering for future phasing at uh, at Garrison Park. We were just talking about it, and kind of, these dirt hills are starting to bring back some ideas. We're not saying yes or no, but just, kind of, are these the type of amenities that are missing in this part of Denver? And is it something that should be looked at either of these two parks, or in possibly future improvements to parks in these neighborhoods? Again, feel free to put it in the chat, unmute yourself, if you'd like to talk about your experience or your family's experience at these dirt hills. Just so, again, we continue to understand what are the amenities that are missing in your community.
This is the area that we're talking about mostly it was not in the dedicated areas of parks, the turf areas, but it was pretty much isolated to what's now the Glenbrook drainage basin, and wastewater is pretty much eliminated that. I don't know if it could be retrofit into there or not. I would not want to see some of the precious green area that we have torn up to make dirt hills. But if somebody could take a look at the wagon trail, the Bowles lateral area, to see if there's any way to fit them in there, especially now that we've daylighted it out to Kipling Street with the new Meritage Homes project on Kipling. We now have a direct connection and make that a regional sort of trail. It would attract a lot more users.
Great, thank you, Councilman, for the additional. Again, we probably can't fit it into this phasing or anything, but the ideas, and definitely we're in the chat.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to have that. And another place that we would bring up is Trestle bike course in the Villa Park neighborhood near 6th Avenue. That's a little smaller than what we have in Ruby Hill, but again, it's one of those amenities that I think go more to the planning and some of those activities that we want to make sure Parks and Recreation offers throughout all of Denver, and not just in certain areas.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that too, knowing it's a bikes on kids, or kids on bikes area, not bikes on kids, there's a lot of different ways to incorporate amenities. It doesn't have to be a pump track or even the bike scoot track that I was describing earlier. There's a thing called a bicycle playground, which is really fun. It's a playground that you experience on your bike. There's also in Montbello, there's the same kind of dynamic, a lot of kids on bikes, and we've developed quite a few different areas where there are like bike training. So it's really just painting on pavement, so they understand what do you need to do when they come to a stop sign, what's a yield sign, and teaching kids how to navigate around on their bike. And so that's obviously a very valuable skill to have, but it's another way to kind of keep our kids safe and get them out and using their bikes. So there's lots of different ways to incorporate those kind of amenities. So I don't know if we want to, we can kind of just let people talk. I know we're supposed to end at 7. I don't want to keep anybody longer than we need to, but I also want to make sure everybody feels like they have an opportunity to speak. So please let us know what you're thinking.
I would also like to just follow up and encourage everybody to take the survey, and we have sections in the survey that, one, are specific questions, and a second portion where you can type in and provide your own commentary. So the survey is valuable feedback that we will input, plus in addition to what we're hearing in the chat and in the meetings. So If speaking in public is not your thing, feel free to type it in.
And again, just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll put the survey one more time in the chat to Steve's point. Please take the survey. Please share with your friends and neighbors, family members, all the additional insight that we get on these two parks is going to be extremely valuable, both for the current project that we have and for some of the long-term improvements that we could do to Southwest Denver. Unless there are any other questions, we will be ending the meeting. We thank you very much for those that were here for any portion of the meeting, either the entire or for the part that you're most interested in. Thank you for all the chat. Thank you for telling us your stories and getting a better understanding. Thanks to Councilman Flynn and his office for being here and continuing to be strong champions for parks in Southwest Denver and the entire area. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Take care.
Well, thank you, Councilman. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you later. Bye.